Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Phil in the Trade, where myself, Phil, and one of our guests go over teams, players, and what's a better fit. I mean, we all have these conversations on who we'd want to have on our team, who we'd want to not have on our team, and this is the conversation, the educated conversation we're going to bring for you guys. Again, today, joined by Hoops Lounge writer and video actor connoisseur Justin Rowan, and today we're talking about the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers been pretty good of late, but every team can get a bit better. Now, Justin, first of all, I wanted to ask you, what made you think that the Clippers should be amongst this list? Because a lot of casual fans would look at them and be like, Lob City, they're playing well. How can you fix this? Every team has its Achilles heels. Where do you think they start there?
Well, I think what made me choose the team is because they're off to a slow start. They're a little bit stagnant. Their perimeter defense isn't what it looked like it was going to be at the start of the year. They just had a good win over Portland, which was very impressive. But really, there do seem to be some holes defensively as well as with their spacing.
Hmm. Well, that does make sense, especially on the perimeter. Matt Barnes, everyone feels, he's a good glue guy. Maybe he's not the long-term answer at the three. Well, he's definitely not the long-term, but is he a championship guy? And then starting J.J. Redick. A lot of people are very high on these two players, but as you've mentioned, they don't always cut it. I mean, guys like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, they're a given. They're all world players. Blake Griffin continues to expand his game. But another name in that starting lineup that I want to bring up is Deandre Jordan. His ability to defend, rebound, shot block. No one's going to argue with this. But at the end of the game, it's got to hit your free throws. And a lot of people said, well, that's why you brought in Spencer Hawes. But I'd argue, is bringing in Spencer Hawes not just adding another defensive liability? So when we're speaking of those three positions, maybe those three guys, what's a name or a trait or an idea that maybe pops out to you that could help these Clippers?
Well, you know what? If you looking with the Clippers, I the main trade that I would identify is moving Matt Barnes. I think that's more so the issue.
Are you going
Spencer
to get
Hawes.
anything for him, though? That's my problem.
What's that?
Are you going to acquire much talent back from him? I mean, he's kind of one of
I
the low-cost, older players who fits a role. I mean, if you really want to bring back a lot of talent, how are you going to acquire that back?
I think what you would do there, and here's my idea: ship Matt Barnes to Toronto. You ship Matt Barnes and Reggie Bullock, who they took in the first round last year. Reggie Bullock's a flat-out shooter. He might not develop into a starter, but he can provide your instant offense. You ship him to Toronto, and you get back Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross, some are questioning his development to this point. He's a good defender. He takes some ill-advised shots. He could probably benefit from the leadership of Doc Rivers and Chris Paul. Toronto, Kyle Lowry's 28. Amir Johnson's getting older. They're in win-now mode. So getting someone that's dependable, that can knock down the three-point shot, I think that would benefit them. Rather than a bit of a wild card in Terrence Ross. There's already been some talk of starting James Johnson over him. So I think Ross, because the Clippers have enough of a foundation there, might be able to blossom there. Toronto, you get a lockdown defender, three-point shooter, and Reggie Bullock as a prospect.
That's an interesting trade because also going forward, Toronto has drafted what they hope is their three of the future in Bruno Caboclo, who I'm very vocal on being a big fan of. And I'm sure after his contract is done, DeMar DeRozan is going to be seeking a new one, and they'll be happy to give it to him. So the question would be, A, is there a spot for Ross? And B, is there money for Ross? Because Ross is really a two, as we've spoken on many times. Like, his ability to play the threes, it's all right, but he gets out-muscled quite often. This is
Right.
why James Johnson and Bruno at his size were brought in, I feel. And it does let them win now. I think it adds some nice character and toughness to that clubhouse. I think there's some good continuity there in Toronto, but I think Matt Barnes would add that edge that they
Right.
might be missing. And I think with the Clippers, it's kind of that roll the dice. I don't think he would be necessarily worse, although I'm not sold he can play the three full time. It's still my bet with him.
Mhm.
I think he would supplant sorry. their two as it stands, and he could be their two of the future to grow with Blake Griffin if he does blossom, because he does have the highest ceiling of all those players we've mentioned.
Right.
Now, do you think if that happened that the Clippers would try to start him at the three with Redick, or go for another placeholder and kind of use him as, because it seems like another 6'5", 6'6" guy. They have Redick, 6'4", Jamal Crawford, both those guys getting a bit older. Do you think? How do you think that all fits together if it did go down?
I think they do start him at the three initially. I believe Ross is 6'6", legitimate 6'6" or 6'7" even.
He's very thin and wiry, right? And so it's a little
He's
tough.
wiry, and that's the issue, right? So he can defend well on the perimeter, but if he gets posted up like we saw in the playoffs by Paul Pierce, all of a sudden his defensive abilities are null. In LA, if he's getting posted up, which takes a little bit of time to develop that post offense, you have Deandre Jordan that can come over and kind of provide some help. He provide the shot blocking. So there's kind of a safety net for him defensively, so he can do what he does well defensively, which is guard the perimeter, and they can help out him getting bullied in the post. If ultimately he's not able to add the mass and he's only able to play two, JJ Redick isn't going to be around there forever, and that's kind of a long-term guy. And plus, Ross brings the highlights. He'll fit in Lob City. Absolutely no
I
problem
think my
there.
problem is I think I really like that for the Clippers. For Toronto, I feel that when you look at their talent level, I think they're definitely a playoff team, maybe a second round team. I have trouble seeing them much past that, and I don't know if this pushes them. And my problem is I understand trading Ross. I think it's a little bit redundant with DeRozan. They do bring different things, but I think ultimately their best positions are both at twos. But at the end of the day, do you risk being a city like Toronto, which has trouble sometimes attracting those big name free agents, trading away that higher end chip with getting more positional glue guys, as opposed to maybe trying to trade it for another guy who needs to, expand his role or is in a bad situation with that higher ceiling, maybe to bring in the front court per se.
I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Because, again, like you said, Toronto is a place that has trouble attracting those higher-end players, so you need to acquire them via trade. Lowry and DeRozan, they've blossomed into all-star caliber players. Valanciunas has taken a step forward. What my line of thinking here is, with Matt Barnes, you're more likely to go second round, or you know what, maybe even make the Eastern Conference Final. Because if, let's say, you catch up an injured Chicago, you might be able to get past an injured Chicago in the second round and make the Eastern Conference Finals. And when you have success, playoff success, it becomes a lot easier to attract a marquee free agent, especially with the All-Star game coming to Toronto. So if you have three talented players in Lowry, DeRozan, and Valanciunas, playoff success, and an organization that's willing and able to spend money, then you might be more attractive, and that's how you make that next step forward. That's my line of thinking.
Well, that does make sense. Now, to wrap it back with the Clippers, the last guy out of the three I mentioned who potentially, I don't think he's moving, but it's worth mentioning just because he does have his shortcomings, Deandre Jordan. Do you think he's there for the long haul? His friendship with Blake Griffin, bringing that chemistry, his ability to, defend at a high level. Do you think his shortcomings on the free throw end and his lack of ability to stay in the game from a coach's perspective is going to make the GM ponder a trade, or do you think him, Blake, and Paul are the untouchables?
I think they do. Judging from my feel of the situation, it looks like they are enamored with DeAndre Jordan. They were approached this offseason, actually, with Omer Asik. They had an opportunity to bring in Asik as their defensive center rather than DeAndre Jordan. That didn't materialize. That didn't happen. He seems to be happy there. They seem to like him. He does have his shortcomings, but it's just so tough to imagine a trade where they get the defensive center they need that is able to hit free throws and kind of fits in well there. So it's really, really tough to address a need because really those players they almost never exist. Your shot blocking guy that can defend the rim. I mean, the only guy that comes to mind kind of is Channing Frye, someone that they didn't pursue at all in free agency.
No, that makes sense. Now, I just wanted to ask, because I haven't heard of that trade rumor before we let you go. The interesting part to me, did that come from the Rockets or Pelicans?
I believe it was the Rockets that were
That would be an
looking to.
interesting fit, DeAndre and Dwight Howard.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's some terrible, like epic, terrible free throw shooting on one team.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
Be
not that
terrible.
Ashik's much better though.
No, he's not, but I think he has a little bit more of a defensive. No, it's true. They're both tragically bad.
Yeah.
But I think the Clippers can't do that because of A, the chemistry, and B, he's a little bit more of a slow plotter, Sheik, and I think they pride themselves in their ability to get up and down the court with almost any team.
Right. So, I mean, DeAndre Jordan fits there. He's got his shortcomings, but I think they just got to kind of ride out what they've got there, at least in that tandem, and hope that it's enough. I mean, in my opinion, they're top three favorite to win the championship this year. So they don't have a lot of work to do, but a little bit of fresh blood, a little bit of life might do some good there.
Absolutely. Well said as always. And as always, anyone out there, do you believe the Clippers have some moves to be made? Please comment in the bottom below and feel free to reach out to us on the social media networks. Once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Justin Rowan. My name is Phil Bolo. This has been Phil in the Trade. Join us every time we post one of these, and always make sure to keep up with all of our work on hoopslounge.com. And as always, catch you guys in the lounge.